Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Medium's World. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. We are already day 8 or part 8 of this series, which is just, it's been going by so fast. And yet every single conversation just continues to contribute so much light and so much, purpose into the world. So I really appreciate you being a part of this event virtually, wherever it is that you are tuning in from. Of course, I have a very another special guest, an amazing medium joining into the conversation here tonight, Emma, and I'll of course get into further introductions with her a little bit just in a few moments. But before we do, I just want to bring us all together as a collective, uniting in our hearts, in our minds, our energy into this present moment, space, and time. So I want to invite all of you to take a deep breath, to close your eyes, get comfortable, and just give yourself the presence of a big exhale, just it's so good to be here. Just letting the day and letting the busyness of life in all of its ways. All of us having the things that we've got going on in life, the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, the challenges as they may be, the joys that we get to celebrate. And of course, such a joy in us being able to come together and to catch our breath, to find our breath, to surrender into this moment, surrender into the present through the inhale and the exhale. That just gives us a chance to close out the outside world from all of the distractions, the busyness of what life can be for all of us. It gives us a chance just to be present, to be still, and to just fall into that space of deep, deep silence and deep, deep peace inside of us. It's through this silence and through this peace that we hear the whispers of spirit, that we are able to receive their communications, their impressions, the visions, the voices, the story of what it is that they want to express and share. From their realm, they are here to serve and help and guide, to nurture us in our recovery from their loss, as well as nurture us in terms of moving forward in our lives. There's the greatest thing, a message from the spirit world I hear over and over again is they want nothing more than for us to know our peace, to know our joy, to know our well-being. They want nothing more than for us to be happy, to be fulfilled in our life. And whatever the relationship, whether it was a positive relationship or it was a challenging one, enriched with karma and challenge, they want to not only reconcile, but also almost like making amends in being able to help, to guide, support, and move into a place of relationship that allows for it to be healthy, for it to be well. And so we praise and we have this deep sense of gratitude and just knowing how much our loved ones in spirit rally around us, how much our loved ones in spirit want us to succeed in bringing in their messages, and how much they want us to thrive and be well in our lives. And so through the breath and through this presence, we can not only fall into this silence and fall into presence, but there's a greater sense of a connection to the non-physical, but more importantly, a greater connection to a deeper truth that lies inside of us, where we can find this appreciation, this deep, deep resonance of gratitude for the gift of the connection, the gift of our life, the gift of our mind, our body, our soul, where we can rejoice in the knowing that we are being assisted in all ways to discover the best and most beautiful ways to nurture ourselves and nurture all aspects of our life. That this guidance, this nurturing flow of communication between worlds not only helps to nurture us, but allows us to do it through divine wisdom, through grace, and that we are fed and nourished with everything we truly need. The universe in all its majesty, always supplying all that is needed. And it is through our connection and through our breath that we receive through the divine grace, where we find the courage to be who we are, to express the love that we feel, the love of these messages from the non-physical world, and that we can use these connections of our own free will in whatever way we feel most fulfilled, guided, but in a way where not only do we feel blessed, but that we too can be a blessing unto others. And so we fall into this deep, deep sense of self, our connection to self, this opportunity to be in communion with the oneness, with the divine, with the all that is, through presence and through breath, through connection, and the blessings upon our lives through these connections, and the blessing upon all of our lives for this sacred connection, this time that we have to share together, which I praise and give thanks for. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. Amen. A million times. And as you take a deep inhale, allowing you to be present and grounded here, imagine you're dropping that grounding cord from the base of your spine, allowing you to settle, to be here, to be celebrated, to be loved, to be seen, and to be nurtured in a way that only the divine can provide. Unconditional presence, grounded in it, felt deeply. Wonderful. Oh my gosh. Oh, so good, so good. And let's get the conversation going. Oh my gosh, it brings me so much joy to have Emma McDonald here with us here tonight. Of course, Emma is a phenomenal medium, and she is a channel between worlds where she is sharing the love, sharing the guidance, and allowing as of her own self to be willing of being in service to bring these insight beyond the veil, beyond worlds, in helping people to know a life of happiness, a life of joy, and of course, a life of love. Emma, I am so thrilled to have you here. Hello, and thank you for being able to come into our side of the world from your side of the world. Of course, Emma's joining us from Australia. Was meant to check the time. What time is it for you at home?
Yes, hello. It is 10 a.m.
10.
10 a.m.
Okay. So it's not like ridiculously early. It's just morning. Good
No,
morning.
it's just morning. Yeah. I have that tendency to say good morning, but I think for most of the people in here, it's good evening.
Exactly right. Oh my gosh. Well, I love that we get to be here, Emma. Thank you so much for, making time and to be, within your world, but of course, in the willingness to share your story into mediumship with everyone here. So let's dive in. When Emma, did you start having experiences with the spirit world? Was it something that you were aware of for most of your life, or was it something that came about for you a little bit later?
Yeah, no, I think there was maybe perhaps little things that happened when I was younger, but it wasn't until I was older. So I think my mum passed away in the April of 2013, and then it was the November of that year that things started happening. I suppose that I was able to really witness and make the connection that it was the spirit world. And then I think it was July of the following year. So my mum started coming through in November of that year. Well, she quite possibly would have been there earlier, but
Right.
when I started to recognize, it was November of that year, 2013, but it was July the following year that I had, someone I didn't know, I had their father drop in. So yeah, it wasn't really when I was younger. No, it was when I
Yeah.
was older. Mm.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing. I mean, this is a part of it for a lot of people too, that there's something that an event that takes place in their life that, they're leading their life, having, what would be like this normal existence, aware of the fact of, life and death and things like that, but not really engaged in terms of that communication with the non-physical world. And then like yourself, the deep loss of your mom, that just, a short time later where she starts making her presence so profoundly known to you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And when you first, was it something that, like, did it surprise you? Were you shocked by this connection? Did it just feel like natural and something you'd been doing your whole life?
Now I suppose looking back, like it kind of does. I think I've always experienced and felt energy. But I think unfortunately it happened to sometimes manifest as anxiety just without knowing what was coming on, or I guess how to center myself or ground myself. So,
Right.
um, but when it first happened, I was actually doing a breath workshop in Bali, and I thought it was a breathing workshop to do with yoga. And I knew how to breathe in yoga, but my sister didn't. So I was like, oh, you need to come along and do this workshop in Bali because you need to learn how to breathe properly in yoga. And obviously, that's not what a breath workshop was, but it is. And I had no idea at the time. And I had this profound cathartic experience in this breath workshop. Like my whole body like clenched. And if anyone's like, my hands froze up and they were clenched for about an hour. And I had like immense pain all over my body and pins and needles, and I was screaming. But they were sort of facilitating you to have these releases during this breath
Yes.
workshop. And I remember, putting my hand up as high as I could to get the facilitator to come over, because I was like, I have no idea what's happening. Like, I'm in so much pain. There's pins and
Yeah.
needles. I don't know what's going on. He's like, you just need to keep breathing. And then this like ginormous scream came out of me. And then not long after that, everything just went in my world, everything just went peaceful. The pins and needles stopped. The pain in my hands stayed. And like my head tilted back and my mother was just there.
Oh,
Like it was just this most profound experience. So when she dropped in, it just is this absolute knowing, and my body was almost frozen. So there was no distraction to not be present with what was happening. Once, I had settled, I suppose, to a degree. And there's just this overwhelming knowing, like she was just there. She had messages for my siblings. She held my hands and she said, you don't believe that I'm here, but I am. And she was like holding
oh,
each hand of mine because they were just shut so tight, closed. Because I guess since she passed, I was looking for her, but like, I couldn't see her, so to speak, or make the connection. So this was where, I was in such a state where it was just this beautiful knowing that she was there, and I seen her and I seen what she was wearing. And then she happened to kind of go to the corner of the room. Like it was just, yeah, it was absolutely incredible. And not what I was expecting, I think. Like I didn't go
right.
into the breath workshop
Right.
to connect with my mom. I just went in there for my sister who
Right.
didn't experience a thing because it wasn't for her. But that's,
Yeah.
how we got there. So yeah,
Right,
it was
right.
just
It's like
magical.
you don't expect to go to a breath work seminar or a workshop or and gathering and come away discovering that you're a medium. Like you just don't expect
No,
that. Right?
no, not at all. Not at all. Yeah,
Oh, it's
amazing.
such a beautiful story. And I know I've heard it before, and it's just like, it just gets my heart every time for her to just be so clear and in a vision to you, for you to be so close and personal in that connection, and just that reassurance of saying, I am here. Like, you don't believe it. I'm here. I'm holding you. I've got you. That's just the ultimate for me. It's just so beautiful, so beautiful. So let's talk about acceptance. So you came away from this seminar and accepting yourself as a medium, this newfound connection to the non-physical world. I mean, it's a lot for an individual to find acceptance with. What about your sister? What about the people around you? Was it something that was easily received? Did you keep it in secret? Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, I kept it in secret.
Of course.
I I went the first time I had what I recognized was, say, an external spirit come in. So a guy I was working for, his father came to me one day. So when that first happened, I reached out to an energy healer I was working with at the time. Was kind of like, oh my goodness, what's happening? because to connect with my mum made sense, because I
Right.
was searching for her and I was looking for her, and I wanted to speak to her and I wanted signs from her, but I wasn't expecting to connect with other spirits. Like that wasn't in my realm at that point in
Right.
time. So when it started to happen, I think there was a lot of like, I would get very overwhelmed. My palms would get really sweaty. My heart would race. And I remember the first time I was like, oh gosh, I'm making stuff up. Like, this is a bit weird. My brain is just making up these crazy stories right now. But obviously, messages are dropping in and they're so clear.
Yeah.
But because you don't know the person or the story, to you, it doesn't quite make sense.
Right.
So no, it took me, I kept it a secret from most people for about 7 years. Um, my energy healer, of course, knew, and I had really close friends. But then even still, it was like one or two
Yeah.
that would know little things that popped up. But no, I kept it to myself because I couldn't explain it. So I was like, someone's going to ask me questions. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to answer their questions. So I'm just not going to talk about it. And it was a few people really close to me that would we would talk about it a little bit, but not much. I think it was really when I started passing messages on, and then you get that confirmation, that your message is correct or someone has lost a loved one, that I was like, oh my goodness, there's something in this. So it was when that sort of started to happen, and I guess I accepted it, but I still didn't know what was going on. Probably until I met you, to be honest. Like, I had so
Right.
many questions no one could answer.
Yeah.
Um, but the people around me, like my younger sister is really open and she certainly accepted everything. But even still, we wouldn't discuss it too much. And I had some really dear friends similar who understood, and they were like, this is incredible. And um, no one ever really around me didn't not accept it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think to begin with, I just didn't know how to explain it, so I kept it in.
Yeah, understandable. And I know that happens for a lot of mediums. It's like that you almost need to wrap your own head and heart around things to and get a real grasp on what's taking place before you can voice anything. Because it's like, how do you explain something you don't understand? It's like,
Yeah,
right? It's like yourself. I have no idea what's happening. I don't know why this is happening. It is happening. It's very, like you said, even that those messages dropping in and it's so random and you're going, what do I do with this? Like, it's like
yeah,
how, right? It can be very overwhelming. You mentioned earlier when you started to share about your interaction with the spirit world, and you mentioned here again, and you bring it up again, I think it's a good part of conversation to have, is the extreme almost reaction, which is what for anxiety that can take place. So many mediums suffer from anxiety. And I know when we even look at in terms of right now what's playing out in the world around us, there is an increase of individuals that are suffering with anxiety. And yet when in knowing that here we are through an evolution and a deeply spiritual year through that we're all discovering our connection to the non-physical world, and a lot of the people who are suffering with anxiety aren't actually suffering from anxiety. What they're experiencing is the closeness and connection to the non-physical world. So as far as mediums, as you say, having anxiety is very, very common for so many individuals. How did you manage that anxiety for yourself? Like, did you begin to like say, okay, I'm connected here in this moment, and you're able to settle it, or did you find that there were other tools or things that you were doing to help or support that?
yeah. That's such a great question, because I've experienced anxiety for quite some time, and at times quite debilitating. And a really close friend of mine, she's really spiritual, and she's just been like, your anxiety is from the spirit world, like not from the spirit world, but because of
Right.
the energy coming
Yes.
towards me when I'm open and not realizing it. I think the most profound thing I have found for anxiety, and when it comes to the spirit world, is a really simple question, and it's, is it mine?
Hmm.
It is just because you will find that as soon as you answer that question, if there's any slight relief, it's not yours.
Right.
And like I've
Right.
done it before. I've done it in work settings, where I'll be feeling extremely anxious, and I'll be like, actually, nothing's happening, and there's no reason for me to feel this way.
Yeah.
And I'll go, is it mine? And I get a moment of relief, and then I'm like, oh, that's not mine. And I'll be
Right.
like, thank you for showing me that, but I don't actually need to carry that. Please send that back to who it belongs to,
Right.
with love and
Right.
compassion. But that's not mine to take on board.
Yeah.
So is it mine is just changed my life. I
It's a
wake up so
lifesaver.
often. The lifesaver.
Exactly. It truly is.
Lifesaver.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know, I do kind of the same thing. The who is, is this my, I always say, who am I feeling? Because I have so much feeling energy, and that I'm feeling the anxiety starting to come up. And it's like, there's so much energy coming at us as spiritual empaths, that we need to get clear about, okay, hang on a second, what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing may probably like 80% or 90% has nothing to do with us. So when we begin to question that, and we're aware of the energy and who am I feeling, it's like the question itself stops the impact of energy. And then we just can say, send it back, in
Yeah.
consciousness, with unconditional love, with compassion, whatever it is. And it's just like, okay, the just recognizing we don't need to carry it. We don't need to suffer with the anxiety. We don't need to suffer.
No,
Yeah.
no, we don't need to suffer. No. And it's such a beautiful gift to be able to feel.
Yeah.
But when we don't have boundaries, or when we're not too sure how to manage it, and you're the first person that taught me boundaries with the spirit world,
Yes.
it changed my life. Changed my life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm so glad to hear that. Most mediums don't realize that they actually have a say, that they're just
Yeah.
tolerating all of this overwhelm and all of the interruptions and the nonstop chatter, of communication that can be happening. And they don't realize they actually can say, hey, stop this. I actually
Yeah.
don't want to do this right now. And we get to decide who, when, where, if. It's all up to us, right?
Yes.
And so those
Yes.
boundaries are so essential in just being able to function healthfully on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let alone when we sit down and make the connection, we want to make sure we have healthy boundaries so that we know, our connections are of the light. So those are supportive as well. But there's just this saying we don't need to suffer. They don't need to be overwhelming us constantly. It's like, okay, I'm aware of you being there, but I think what also is quintessential in it is not only do we put the boundaries in terms of stopping some of the things of what we're experiencing, but also opening up with a willingness or an agreement that says, and there are some things I would like to experience, or I am going to take some time and communicate later, or I'm going to, one day a week, whatever it is, where we're just making the agreement of so that it becomes a mutually respectful and a mutually beneficial relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I've done it many a times. I did it in a yoga class once. It was a yoga nidra, so it was a meditation. And I really wanted to listen to the teacher because I was teaching a meditation class soon. So I was like, and so a dear friend of mine's, I think his auntie dropped in, and I was like, oh, not now, not now, not now. I was like, I really want to listen. And her message was persistent, and we had a little dialogue. And then I was like, okay, like, if such and such happens, I'll pass on your message, but please, can you give me some space now? Because I really need to listen to the
Right.
meditation. So
Yes.
yeah, it's learning that just because they're ready and they want to come in, if it's not a good time for you, that's okay. And the
Yes.
moment you haven't missed the moment, you haven't missed the message. It's just
Right.
it's just boundaries, because we need to have them as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's that's also changed my life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I remember one time traveling and I was on an airplane, and this before I really understood the importance of boundaries, in terms of defining what was acceptable and non-acceptable in this relationship that I have with them. And I was on the airplane, and it was like, when you think of an airplane, you've got like 230 passengers on an airplane, and there were like everybody's like, it was just like nonstop chatter. Here I'm trying to go on vacation, and I have everybody's loved ones coming at me with messages for people on the plane. It was all this combustion of energy that was there. I was starting to feel very overwhelmed. My anxiety was kicking in. I was going to like start this, like what felt like this panic attack. And I just really was like, oh my God, I either need to stand up and start just randomly giving messages out here on the airplane to people, And I'm like, that I don't want to do that. So I was like, okay, you actually, I'm on vacation. You can't bother me now. And
Yeah.
as soon as I said that, they went, oh. And I was like, wow, I've never set out a boundary that says, like you did in that yoga class, I actually don't want to talk right now because I'm focused on something specific I need to learn, or on even having that sacredness of a day off or a vacation, you know? It was
Yes.
like the moment
Yeah.
I said that, it was like everybody's loved ones just backed off. And I was like, okay,
Mm,
wow, there's something to this.
it's amazing. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so
Yeah.
amazing, so amazing. So you've been working, of course, professionally. I mean, you have, you've been juggling a full-time job and, of course, being a medium and stepping into, of course, as the healer. And I mean, you've got so many tools and things under your belt in terms of how you help women, in the things you facilitate and the retreats that you participate in, and help in terms of those healing circles. Now that have this professional component of things, I mean, you've talked about your own personal experiences, but was there a defining moment for you in doing a reading for someone that you have a story to share, or something happened that just said, oh my gosh, this has just solidified everything for me?
Yeah, actually, and I think what it was the first time I did a reading like over Zoom, because as well, I think to begin with, and when I would go and see my energy healer, I would physically drive. It was about I think it was roughly 2 hours or something, that I would go and see her because I thought I had to sit with her for her to read
Yeah,
my energy. So I think it was actually the first time I did a reading over Zoom, and it was really early in the morning because of the time difference. I think it was 6 a.m. for me. And the night before, I had messages starting to come through, and I had like a name. And in the morning, I hadn't eaten and I'd only just had a coffee, and my stomach was really, really bloated. Um, and I had a brief understanding, but even still, to be so bloated so early in the morning was very unusual for me. And
yeah,
I was on Zoom, so I was like this, just the top head of me
right.
was on Zoom. But I was holding my belly like I was pregnant because I was so bloated and it was quite sore. So I was holding it, and I kept hearing the name, a certain name come through. And sometimes I'm a little off on names, sounds like. So
Yes,
I sort of had, the word, I think it was the word Beth, came through. And all of a sudden, and from what you've taught me, that everything is something,
yeah,
which changed my life. So many
right.
things in my life. When everything is something, so here I am just going like, oh gosh, my belly's so bloated. And I was like, hang on a minute. This is womb, this is pregnancy, this has got something to do with that. And I said, I have like a daughter energy come through. And I said, I'm hearing the word Bethany. I said, it's got something to do with pregnancy. And the person quickly was like, oh my goodness, you have my daughter Stephanie come through. I lost her
Oh,
at birth. And it
oh,
was the first time that it was just like, oh my goodness, wow, that everything is something. Like yeah, as I said, I could had like a brief understanding of why I was bloated, but then
right.
as you also taught me, as soon as I speak to that, that eases and dissipates, because spirit obviously uses our body to communicate. So that's also been a huge lesson I've had to learn and place boundaries around that, because I feel so much. I don't
Yes.
want extreme physical feelings. It's not in my highest good. So, but that I think was just,
Yeah.
yeah, that was just incredible. You know, when you really drop into what's happening like
Yeah.
that, and I like
Yeah.
literally sitting there holding my belly like I was pregnant, and then, same thing, this is not mine. This is
Right.
actually not mine. And so speaking to it, and then that person going, oh, yeah, you've got my daughter who came
Oh,
through.
and so,
That
there's
was,
the sound like Bethany, Stephanie, and this
yeah,
is where again, right? It's like it can sometimes be very clear in a name, and then sometimes it's a little bit distorted. So it's always, in the offering, which was such a key thing for you in that, but let
mm,
alone the physical experience that you were having through, and which is a clairsentient experience where it was like you were the one who was pregnant, you were the one who was
yeah,
going right. And I always say, say, we can have aches and pains in our bodies, and we have different, struggles or challenges with illness or even mobility issues, etc. We're all human. We've all got our
Yeah.
stuff. But when we communicate with spirit, what they'll do is they'll use that. They'll use it as like, it's like the pain body gets exaggerated, or suddenly, like a sore hip. If you got a sore hip from maybe you stretched wrong in yoga, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, my hip is so sore. And you think it's you, but it's not.
Mhm.
Spirit's using that. So speaking to it, it's like the moment you speak to it and say, my attention is really taken to my hip. I'm really feeling like this individual may have had issues with their hips. And it's like, yes, my grandma had hip replacement surgery. Okay, perfect. And it's like the moment you speak it, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, my hip's not hurting anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm
Yeah.
back to my ache or pain.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's amazing. I have like honestly goosebumps from head to toe on that. That's so, so profound and powerful. And that's also what happens for a lot of mediums. Even though we have a setup for a reading and we've got somebody coming, it's not uncommon to get some of those initial hits and information well before we've even made the connection with the person. So that's also why it's important to recognize that this is not necessarily ours. What we're experiencing and feeling, we can be receiving something, and there's no such thing as time on the other side. So they're just bringing it in, even though we're 2 or 3 days away from that reading, right? So we're just
Yes.
like, who am I feeling? What's what's this? This energy is not mine. And we can then it's like, wow, okay, it begins to make sense. Those
Yeah.
random thoughts, those things that came out of nowhere. It's like, oh my gosh, your loved one was coming through me like 3 days ago already for this conversation. Yeah, yeah. So incredible, so incredible. And that's where, again, what we experience physically, what we're thinking, what's happening in our environment around us, everything is a
Mm.
part of spirit communication.
Everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Everything. We really become keen at listening and taking in, everything that we're seeing, we're hearing, we're feeling, we're smelling, we're tasting. It all becomes a part of the greater message. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
amazing, so amazing. At what was it for you, Emma, that led you to the point of saying, I need to devote some time and effort in helping other people through this modality? What was it for you?
Um, that's such a good question. I think I began to realize, like, when I would play games with the spirit world and passing messages on, because I was like, I didn't know what was happening. And I
Yeah.
was so, I guess, scared to begin with, of being like embarrassed. So I would, say to the, spirit, like, if you want me to pass this message on, you have to give me a reason or show me a sign. And I would play with whatever they would send through. But I think when I started to pass on messages and you just see that overwhelming sense of peace in another human being, and obviously having lost my mum, I deeply understand grief and how long it can affect you,
Yeah.
and how profound it is. And especially like if you're stuck in it, to have that moment of peace that you do see in someone when you pass a message on. It's honestly, I remember thinking, like, I had no idea I would help people in this way. And it's so absolutely incredible and uplifting, to be able to help people in that way.
Yeah.
I was, I did a little bit of health coaching. So I was like, oh, I'm going to help people, with food and exercise and all the physical things.
Yeah.
But then you pass on this message that it's not possible for you to know. And that, I think it was that when I started to pass on messages and just seeing that moment of peace in
Mhm.
people, or that release, or, when someone, sighs, and so they really get
Yeah.
it, and they
Yeah.
really feel it. Or, you know, someone, I had a friend who, you know, I would say, a disgruntled relationship, I guess, with her dad for basically all her life. And then he passed and they never really resolved it. And he came through in a message, and the amount of acceptance and peace she was able to bring into her life
Oh,
because
see.
of that, and
Yeah.
help her move forward in life. Like,
Yeah.
what a gift to be able to help people,
Yeah.
in those moments. So I think it was when I started passing messages on, and
Mhm.
noticing that moment of peace someone
the
gets from
the impact that those messages
it.
have on someone's life can literally change the trajectory of their life. Like
Yeah.
I have sat, and I didn't know this at the time, but I sat and I was doing a reading for a gentleman, and I connected with his mom. He had lost both his mom and dad had crossed. He was he felt like he'd been, abandoned. That's what happens for a lot of people through death, is they feel like they've been abandoned by their parents after they're both gone. And so he was, and I'm connecting with his mom. His mom was of Ukrainian descent. And I don't speak Ukrainian, but that day I did, because I said something, I translated something that she gave me, which literally changed the trajectory of his life. And
Mm.
when that session was over, he said to me, Bonnie, I have to be honest with you. He goes, the whole time, and just brace yourself. He says, the whole time that I coming into this session, he goes, I have a gun sitting in my lap. And he said, I was planning on killing myself.
Mm.
And he said, after hearing what you said to me and what you spoke to me in Ukrainian, he said, you changed everything. You just saved my life, Bonnie.
Wow. Yeah.
I was stunned by that, just stunned, and never even realized, like, for him to be in such a state within his own life, that this was his last hope. It was his last
Oh,
hope. And for him to be able to offer that to someone was just like, let people say what they want in the world, because what
oh,
takes place in front of you and happens, it's like, though, that's where the miracles come from. That's where the miracles
absolutely.
come from. And to this day, he still says, oh my God, thank you for saving my life. You saved my life,
Oh,
and
that
that's what
is
it's all
so
about.
beautiful. That
Yes.
is what it's all about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the impact, you
Exactly.
just like that
Yeah.
message and how it can impact someone, the peace that comes, the healing that takes place. It's just profound. It's profound. Yeah,
Yeah, it
wow.
really is.
Yeah. Okay. So, as in your mediumship journey, what has been your biggest challenge for you? Like, people come in, they've got, their doubts and insecurities, they've got fear, they've got, maybe they're struggling to, maybe they've had trauma in the past, or dark entity experiences. What was your biggest challenge that you needed to overcome?
Oh gosh, trust. It was definitely trust. It was
Yeah.
trusting myself, trusting my body, trusting my ability. I think it was definitely trust. As soon as I trusted what was coming through, there was no question about what was coming through. And obviously working with you was a big part of that, because you
Yeah.
taught me how to talk back, ask questions. Can you tell this to me in a different way?
Yes.
Um, because initially I would play games with spirit because I didn't trust. Like I had a dear friend of mine who I said his auntie came through during that yoga, and
Yeah.
I knew him from outside of yoga, and I knew him. So I was like, I'm not. A message came through, and I was like, oh, I'm not passing that on. No, 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 no. You're going to embarrass me. I'm not doing it. And obviously, spirit's persistent.
Yes.
And I sent back, well, you need to give me a reason, or give me something else, and I'll pass your message on. And all I heard was, if when you wake up, he's wearing a blue jumper, you have to pass this message on. And I was like, fine. And then I was like, and please go away. But I would do this all of the time. Like, you
Oh
need to
my
give me
God, I
another
love that.
reason. And I would play these games because I didn't trust. I didn't
Yes.
trust what was coming through. I didn't trust my ability to share. I didn't trust my ability, to hold space for somebody else.
Mhm.
Um, and that particular scenario, when I got up, I was speaking with this guy outside of the class because we knew each other from another gym facility we used to go to together. So we were talking about that, and then I when we got up. So when we laid down, and it was yoga nidra, so I was meditating. He was wearing a white singlet because he had just finished a power class, a power yoga flow, like a power yoga flow. So he
Yes.
was wearing a white singlet. I laid down, closed my eyes, and that was me done for the session. Like I didn't open them again. And the message is when you get up, if he's wearing a blue jumper, you have to say something. And then when I was talking to him outside, he had like not only a blue, I think you guys kind of call it as a sweater, like a blue
Yes.
sweater on. He had a blue mat and a blue water bottle. And I was like, oh my goodness, here we go. I've got to say something. So, that's what I
Oh,
used in the beginning because I didn't trust. I was
yes.
like, give me something else so I know what's going on here. So for me, the biggest thing was trust. I think that really changed what was happening. And there were so many things you taught me, you know, like something is everything and the boundaries
Yeah.
and your bias was massive. That changed my life
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
So once I began to understand how things worked, like even with him, what spirit showed me was him sitting on the beach blowing kisses to heaven. And that's what I said to him. I was like, okay, this is going to sound weird and please don't ask me any questions. And I was like, da, 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 da. My palms were sweaty and I got anxious as I used to. And I was like, were you sitting on the beach recently blowing kisses to heaven? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, I'll see you later. And I started to like back away, but he was like, why did you say that? And I was like, oh no. And I was like, oh, I just, I was like, I felt the spirit come through and they showed me you sitting on the beach blowing kisses to heaven. And I was like, I'm not passing the message on. And they're like, if you're wearing a blue jumper, you have to. And he looked down and he was like, oh, wow, realizing all the blue. And then it clicked. And he said to me, oh, my auntie passed away 2 weeks ago. And I was sitting on the beach on Friday night and I looked up to the heavens and the clouds parted and I was sending her love. Like, is that what
Oh,
is that what you're talking about? And I'm like, oh my God, that's it. She just wanted you to know that she got you, like that she got that.
yeah.
But at the time, I didn't understand too much of your bias. So I didn't
Right.
realize he wasn't literally blowing
He
kisses
was
to heaven.
right. He was
But they
sending love.
needed to show me that so I could interpret and understand it.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. Oh my
So
gosh, isn't that incredible? And that happens lots in sessions too, where we'll deliver things and it's like it doesn't make sense to the person and they're going, no, that's not it. No, I don't I don't know that doesn't fit for me, etc. And then it's like when
yeah,
you give them and it's like you pause, like when you're instead of rushing in the session, that's part of what I teach as well. It's like just let there be some time in there. You don't have to hurry and bring everything in at once go back and ask spirit for more information. And while you're doing that, the person's processing what you just shared with them.
yeah,
They need that opportunity because they don't always understand immediately what took place. And I can't even tell how many times after a session was over that people would contact me later and say, it didn't make sense at the time, but now I know what you're talking about, right?
yeah,
Yeah. And that's a big part of it, which creates that feeling of distrust because
yeah,
you're going, but this is what I'm receiving and it's not making sense. Oh my gosh, I messed this up. I really got this wrong. It's like I can't trust myself to know what is the message here or the understand the impression that I'm receiving. And so I love how you played the games with them. Like I think that's hilarious, Emma. It's so fitting just knowing your personality. It's like, no,
yeah,
you guys, we're gonna play a game here. If you this really needs to happen, there's certain things I expect of you in order for me to do that. And I think that's great because that's building, a relationship based on what you require to feel confident and secure in this as well. But also,
yeah,
again, it can really that can be a having someone say no, it doesn't make sense can really affect, almost create a lack of confidence in it, which of course, lack of confidence leads to more distrust in it. And so, for then we look at these things, I would say take the wins because those people coming back after and saying, oh my gosh, that made perfect sense. Now I understand. It's like, oh, good. Okay, great. We need to hear that feedback as well, because it
yeah,
helps us in bolstering our confidence and of course deepening that sense of trust with the spirit world and
yes.
in trust in ourselves even as medium. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
As soon
gosh.
as you have
So
trust, the flow is so strong. The flow of what comes through in a reading is so
yeah,
strong. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, that's so amazing. So, of course, we've got people gathering from around the world, of course, and a lot of mediums that are coming because it's so great to hang out with your people and to hear this, and it helps to validate things, and where we know, like, whoa, I'm actually not alone in the world, and other people are going through these things, and we learn, learning from the conversations and from each other through this. What advice do you have, Emma, for anyone that is considering developing, moving forward, and opening up their connection even more to the spirit world, or even stepping forward and beginning to do readings for other people? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's some practical things that you can do. And it's the basic things like kind of eating well, staying hydrated, and eating well is high vibrational foods, right? It's
Yeah.
not really, I mean, at the time when all my mediumship started to happen, because I was so deep in grief with losing my mum. I wasn't drinking alcohol. I was eating exceptionally well because I was suffering such bad anxiety. Alcohol would it just made me feel so bad the following day. And the depression from it, or the come down, I suppose you could say.
Yes.
Not that I ever drank a lot, but any amount, I just was like, I couldn't handle it. So it was a really long period without alcohol in my life, which helped my connection. I didn't realize at the time. So I guess there's little things like that you can do. But honestly, finding a mentor like yourself, I think if someone, for you, working with you in level 1, honestly changed everything that I did. It changed the directory of my mediumship, because even I didn't realize, I could ask them to come back at a later stage, or if it, like there was just I had so many questions, and you
Yeah.
answered all of them.
Yeah.
But like, not only that, and the next module would come about, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, I need this, or I needed to know this, or like,
Yeah.
I just was, and I had searched for you, I think, for like, 5 years, but not knowing anyone even taught mediumship.
Right.
Um, and I was so grateful, in an astrology reading, someone referred you to me, because at
Right.
that point I was really frustrated. Someone said to me, they read my chart in an astrology reading. It's a beautiful girl called Sarah, who's just divine.
Yeah.
And she said to me a bunch of things, and everything was really bang on. And one thing she said was, oh, you have a really strong connection to spirit. And I almost snapped. I was like, yeah, but what do I do with that? Because spirit would come to me when they wanted, not when I wanted.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, but what? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? I was probably at a point of frustration at that point in time. She was like, oh, there's this lady Bonnie Worth. And like,
Yeah.
honestly, because you could just answer all of my questions and give me guidance, and understanding your bias was just,
Yeah.
everything was just life-changing. The boundaries, the energy. So I think really finding a mentor is a huge part, I think, if you want to evolve your mediumship and help you understand it. But then it's the basics, like, perhaps drinking less alcohol, and eating high vibrational foods,
Right.
and, finding stillness in your
Yeah.
life.
Oh,
Um,
see,
yeah.
stillness. That's such an important piece of this as well, because we can't hear our guides, our angels, our loved ones on the other side when we are constantly in chaos.
Mhm.
We need to center. We need time for stillness.
Yeah.
We need that quiet, because they speak in whispers. They're speaking in energy. So we have to
Right.
pause any other disruption of energy that is around us in order to tune into the energetic impressions that they're bringing in. And I love that you bring up, I refer to them as the 3 basic spiritual needs, where we look at it in terms of, there's so many logistical reasons and things that make sense as to why we need to eat healthy, why we need to drink lots of water, why we need to exercise. There's so many purposes for that in terms of our physical body. But from an energetic standpoint, or a mediumistic approach to this, where we look at hydration, allows for there to be an increase of vibration, where is when we're dehydrated, the cells of our body are dehydrated. And so it's creating additional friction in the body, and the cells are literally rubbing up against each other. Whereas when we're hydrated, the cells are nurtured, and it creates some buoyancy. And with that, space between the cells, and that's where the energy flows. We need to make space for that energy to move through our body, and hydration can help. Hydration also bolsters our mental state as well. And it's
Yeah.
easier to be optimistic and happy when we're hydrated. And in that higher vibration, it allows for there to be literally flow between the physical and non-physical world. It creates
Yes.
flow, right?
Yeah.
And so you look at all of these things, even as far as, and I'll just talk about the 3 basic spiritual needs here, because they're so important. Nutrition, high vibrational foods, like you said, it's important that we're not eating, for, again, all the health reasons of processed foods and things like that. It all makes sense. But to understand that those are low vibrational foods, and low vibrational foods put our bodies into a completely offsetting frequency from being able to connect with the spirit world. So again, nutritional food, high vibrational foods help to bolster your physical body, but it helps to bolster this energetic connection between worlds. It helps to sync things up that much easier. It's like when we eat well, we feel well, but there's just a higher state of energy that we're able to tune into as a result. And then of course the third one being exercise. Now I mean, girl, I'm telling you, you are my inspiration. I mean, you are, oh my gosh, the things you do in terms of your fitness and your competitions. And I mean, you just excel in terms of your body connection. And I mean, not everyone exercises to that degree or can exercise to that degree.
Mm.
So exercise really is just about expressing energy. So any
Mm.
gentle movement, yoga, stretching, going for a walk, doing something to express the energy that's looking to move through your body. If we're not moving our body, that energy gets stuck and it gets stagnant, and it lowers our vibration. So when we
Yeah.
can exercise, not only does exercise relief endorphins and again help us, in terms of being positive and happy, but it helps to move this energy, which allows us to receive even more. So it becomes so important. Again, I talk about them all the time, as you know, and they're a part of the, teaching in the program because it's such an important part in terms of our spirit communication and for us to be well in doing this work too. We need to take care
Yes.
of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Emma, on another thing here, and of course, I want to go into the forum for answering some questions and sharing. We also have, of course, people that are participating in this series because they are dealing with the loss of their loved one, and they're seeking more knowledge, more understanding, and of course, as you said, earlier, seeking to have that sense of peace in their life. What advice or words do you have to offer to those who are dealing with an exceptional loss?
Yeah, I think first of all, like my heart goes out to you because I know how it feels. Mum passed 10 years ago, and even still, it was only 8 weeks ago. I had a really low, low, low moment in my life due to another family member having a really similar health scare.
Yeah.
So, all of the emotions and everything came flooding through, and it was overwhelming. So, um, I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give to people is it's not necessarily time that heals, but it's finding joy in your life that
Mm.
actually heals. As I mentioned, it was only 8 weeks ago, I was in a world, like an absolute world of pain and despair,
Yeah.
and felt like I was right back to the beginning. But A, I bounced back quicker than I had previously, and B, it's the joy in my life that helps me get through grief. It's not time doesn't heal. That's not,
No.
it's actually joy. I've got a nephew now, and it's just so many little things, and he's just delightful. Like it's honestly the joy. So it's looking for that. I think finding a way to create stillness to connect to your loved ones, because oh my goodness, they are there. And
Yeah.
even the beginning, they're quite loud. And it's if you're looking for like a literal sign, even sometimes you might miss perhaps what they're trying to say. Like mum would always play certain music. And so if I would hear it wherever I was, or even at little family gatherings, everyone would, oh, mum's here, because her song would come over the
Yeah.
speaker, or the restaurant we were at. So we would always know. And if I ever felt mum's presence, I think as well as not questioning it. Like
Mhm.
in the beginning too, like a lot of the time she'll sit beside me in the car a lot of the time. And it's like, oh, hey, mum, like, hey, like, and, tuning in. And I don't even know how many times I literally did it 2 days ago, no, a few days ago, actually, driving. I put my hand and I sit it as if I'm like holding
Oh,
someone's hand in the passenger seat.
yeah.
There's no one physically there, but I just know, like I just know. So I hold my hand there and I sit my hand on the seat of the passenger side,
Oh,
and
it's
just,
beautiful.
I imagine that someone's holding my hand, but I know that somebody is. So I think it's in the beginning, like if you feel somebody is there, is to trust it, because they are. The
Yeah.
moment you feel it and you get that thought, that's my wife or my son or my friend or my auntie or whoever, the first thought of the person who comes in, that's them.
Yeah.
And then, if you're struggling perhaps to get messages, angel cards are phenomenal. I have my mother's deck, so I'm really
Wow.
blessed.
Yes.
So if I ever was like, Mom, I need your help, or can I have a message? I would specifically use her angel cards. I've got a few decks now, but I would specifically use hers.
Yeah.
And I would pull a card from that deck, and I know directly it's a message from my mom.
Right.
So yeah,
Oh, I love Emma. I love that. And it's just in saying, it's like the knowing that they are there is one thing, but what you can do and how you can express and how you can create the connection for yourself, even if there are things that maybe you're in doubt over the fact of whether they're
mm,
hearing you, whether they're there. And again, as you said, if if you're thinking it's them, you're having that thought or you feel that it is, like you wouldn't have
yeah,
that thought or feeling otherwise, right? And it's
yeah,
just trusting
that's
it. And I
right.
love it. Oh my gosh, I think it's so beautiful what you do. I remember several years ago that one of the things, like my dad loved to dance. And so I remember one time where I was just really missing him. And again, my dad's been gone for like, 34 years. Like it comes in waves, right? And it's like that's why I would say we never get over the losses of our loved ones. Like we don't. And I love how you said, joy is where the healing is. There's healing in the joy. Time doesn't heal. It's the joy. And but it will hit you. Like all of a sudden it's like you're caught and you're still going through another layer of the grief, or something's happened in your life and you're longing or missing that person in your life. And I was going through that for myself at one point. And I remember I just closed my eyes and I was standing in my living room and I just imagined that my dad was dancing with me. Like
Oh,
I just felt, but I felt like I was actually waltzing with him. Like I could just feel and sense. And the whole time my eyes were closed and I had this, it was like I imagined it, but I also know that through the imagination, it was a very, very real experience because it was so visceral for me. And
yeah,
again, I love you said, like, reach out, hold the hand. Nobody's there,
yeah,
but guess what? Somebody is holding your hand.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful, so beautiful. Okay, let's go over into the forum. I'm going to take a look here. Of course, thank you to everyone. If you have any questions, please take a moment to post those. Emma, of course, is going to stay and join the conversation here tonight. Hello, Kathy. She's coming here from Massachusetts. Haley coming in from Nanaimo, Austin, Michigan. There you are, Faith. Hello, welcome. Happy to be live again. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you weren't here yesterday. Exactly. Kathy's saying it's so encouraging to hear that mediumship can happen suddenly. She said it gives her hope, right? Not everybody's born with it. They're not. Like Emma, like if you can even just share a little bit more about that. Like it's just like it's like you literally were woken up to it in in your workshop. Like it wasn't, you didn't go there knowing you were a medium the day before.
No, no.
Right.
And I distinctly remember as a child the moment I forgot, actually, because
Right.
we reincarnate, and that's my belief, whether or not somebody else, believes the
Yes.
same. But my belief, is we experience other lives and we reincarnate. And I specifically remember a period in my childhood where I got so overwhelmed and frightened that we die. So I know now that that was the moment I forgot. So I would have had things happen as a child, but I don't
Yes.
remember. But I specifically remember I zoomed out into like where I lived, and I zoomed out further and zoomed out to the world, and I just kept going out and out and out. I was like, oh my God, there is nothing. And just being absolutely petrified. And I think that's the moment, really when I forgot about everything else in terms of my spiritual journey. And
Right.
then when my mum passed, I seen that in my energy healer a lot, because I wanted, and even after the breath workshop, I was like, I need a message from my mum. I'll go see my energy healer. Like
Yeah.
I would go to her for messages. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely didn't go into that workshop thinking that this is, what's going to happen at all. At all.
Right.
I really, really thought it was for my sister and for her to learn how to breathe in yoga. So
Right.
it was, and then it was, it's an unfolding of things that began to happen because the trust needs to begin to build. If
Mhm.
something, if something just dropped in and you're like, oh, that's a message from spirit, like, I guess unless you've had it your entire life, it doesn't make sense because
Right.
we think so literally and we're still having a human experience. So if it's something that is coming to you or you begin to develop, like your brain and the human part of you still needs to kind of marry the two. And your spiritual practice, a bit like anything, like going to the gym and strengthening a muscle, you can't just go to the gym and do 100 push-ups,
Right.
or maybe you can, but
Right.
most people
Yeah.
can't. Most people can't. So if at a later stage in life, like myself, you're beginning to learn mediumship, or you're beginning to do push-ups, you're beginning to allow those messages to come through, you need to strengthen your connection, your belief, your trust.
Yeah.
So all of that, developed, over those, well, still is.
Still
There's
is.
lots,
Yes.
but yeah, over
Yeah.
those 7 years,
Yeah.
it was just an evolving journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think thank you so much for sharing, Emma. And I think Kathy, here too, I've worked with a lot of mediums where, again, they had no significant experiences with the non-physical world until something happened. For some people, it wasn't until they went through another energy healing modality where all of a sudden they were sensitized energetically. And then all of a sudden that's what woke them up to this connection with the non-physical world. Other people, it was, could have been from being ill, having a high fever, that all of a sudden it's what opened them. Death of a loved one, just like in Emma's case, can be the very thing that opens up that portal to the other side. A car accident, anything, and there can be various things that can happen later on in life. But here it is, as we look, and I talked about the high levels of anxiety that people are going through. There is more and more of awareness happening to non-physical world. It's like the spiritual world. I love how, Emma, you said about marrying the two. This is like where this is really asking for the unity and the connection between physical and non-physical worlds. And there's more and more people waking up even later on in life to the fact that this actually is very real, that they're having very up close and personal interactions with loved ones that they've never experienced ever in their life before. And nothing
Yeah.
has happened. Nothing's changed other than the frequency and the elevation of the energy of the earth and of the cosmos. And it's opened up, this higher vibrational energy has opened up that connection. Greater spiritual awakening happening on our planet than ever before. And that's putting us up close and personal with the non-physical world too. So just know that whenever you come into this, whenever you are awoken, it's perfect. You're exactly
Yeah.
on path. You weren't supposed to know this any sooner. You weren't supposed to be
Yeah.
aware any sooner. There was something that your soul needed to experience for whatever amount of years it needed to experience it before this was this next step for you. So just
Yeah.
know we're never too late. We never, I often think too, was like, man, I wish I would have known some of the stuff that I know now when my kids were little. But then it's also this, it wasn't supposed to be that way. It wasn't.
That's
Because
right.
there were other things. There's other things that my soul was looking to experience first.
Yeah.
Right. So we trust wherever we are, we're right on path.
Right on path. Yeah.
Right on path. Oh my gosh. So good. All right. Awesome. Okay, so Donica's saying really great advice. She's really grateful for the advice. Susan's saying, I agree. Having the light bulb realization that there is a need for boundaries with the spirit world was just like in the physical world was a game changer for her.
Mm.
Right?
Right.
Absolutely. It's like, again, people, like I said, the number of mediums that I've talked to, they didn't even realize they had to stay. They were just putting up with it, suffering with it. Even what is, on a clairsentient basis, like we can experience aches, pains, illnesses, things like that, where spirit's making us feel really nauseous and whatever. Instead, but what we do, or I won't say we, but what some mediums will do, will just complain about how nauseous the spirit is making them instead of going, okay, thank you for showing me that. You can let that go. We don't need to
Yeah.
suffer with it, right? So it's just like, yeah, we need to have established those boundaries. Any relationship needs boundaries,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Oh my gosh. Donica says, I never ever thought all of this, that anxiety or squirrel moments could be other people's energy, but I never get messages or feelings of others, if that makes sense. It does make sense. Yeah.
It does make sense. Yeah. And I think when you begin to question it though, is when you might realize that perhaps it might be, you might be feeling others. Is this mine? And any
Yes.
moment of relief, you'll actually begin to realize it could be somebody else's.
Right.
Yeah.
And the messaging piece of it too, Donica, even though there aren't necessarily the messages incoming, first and foremost, spirit wants you to recognize that they're there. They need to establish that, so they're going to try to get your attention. All kinds of things are going to play out and happen, like which can sometimes freak you out a little bit, but that energy coming at you can be so overwhelming that it can actually interfere in the message. So it is about establishing, where you find this way of saying, okay, who am I feeling? What's just recognizing, I'm recognizing the energy of depression, I'm recognizing the energy of grief, I'm recognizing the energy of anxiety. When we begin to understand we are energy sensitives and we are experiencing energy, and if we can recognize it in that way, then it doesn't become a part of us. We're no
Yeah.
longer having to process and deal with it, right? So yeah, it's like once you understand that component of it and you become empowered within it, then the messages will start to begin to make sense. The signs, the symbols, the things, and again, it comes with, sometimes what do you think the message is? Because
Yeah.
that's right. It's that claircognizant where sometimes we just have to ask, what do I think this person needs to hear? Because it's actually spirit saying this is what they need to hear right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so amazing. Kathy says that story about the pregnancy gave her goosebumps. I know, me too. Oh, she says more goosebumps about the gun. I know, so many goosebumps, Kathy. So good. Hello, Leon. Leon's loving it. Veronica would like to know, Emma, what other than playing games, how did you build your trust?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I mean, the games was a big one. And it's of course
Yeah,
when you pass on the messages and you get that confirmation back from somebody,
yeah,
was a big part of it. But I think building trust, it was like, being confident in decisions even I was making, or if something, starting to be like, you get these small hints of like, hey, maybe you should go right today instead of left. And also like trusting that and find that you'll run into someone amazing, or
yeah.
perhaps don't go to that cafe, go to a different one, and you meet somebody who you never would have thought you met, that you just have a brief conversation about something incredible. So I think it's like helping with the trust as well, and like sort of removing of the fear. So setting boundaries with the spirit world was a big one to help me
Yeah.
build trust. And then also sometimes I guess like, away with spirits as well, and understanding of them and their energy. And then knowing, I think building trust as well is really diving into your fear. Like if you have
Yeah.
fear of speaking up or fear of mediumship, fear of being judged. I've done a lot of personal work
Yeah.
in looking into that and being seen and speaking up and living my truth. And that's an evolving journey. It's still actually
Right,
going,
exactly. It's
um,
ongoing. It continues
ongoing,
continuum. Yeah.
ongoing always. But I think really looking into that, because when you begin to trust what's coming through and you pass on messages, you're actually getting to a point where it doesn't matter if someone's judging what you're saying, or it doesn't matter if someone doesn't understand what I'm saying. It actually doesn't matter. There's like, and I guess it's that feeling of being judged and scared, and like people are going to think I'm crazy. And I've been through all of that. Like people think I'm going to be woo woo and I don't know what I'm
Right.
off the planet, and they're not going to trust
Yeah.
me, and they're going to think I'm lying. And so I think having to look at all that and
Yeah.
look at like, is it a fear and is it true? And, doing the work. I've done a lot of Byron Katie's work, like
Yes.
doing the work at looking
I.
into your fears and
Yeah.
kind of dissolving them as well. It helps you so much then with trust as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Emma. Trust is a root chakra issue. So when we look at everything incorporated with that, what holds in the root here is really begin with trusting yourself. Trust yourself. Can you trust yourself to make a good decision for yourself? Can you trust yourself to eat healthy? Can you
Yeah.
trust yourself to, right? Build your relationship, your trust relationship with yourself first, Veronica, because that's going to create a stabilization within the root chakra that you can trust yourself. And as you trust yourself, you can then begin to trust in the signs that you begin to, because you're the signs you begin to see, or the messages that you start to hear. But where I always say we come back, anything that goes on for us, I was like, we need to go to the root of the problem, because everything is at, our safety. When we look at all the fears, exactly what Emma said, all of those fears. That's the root chakra issue, because it's, again, living in fear and distrust instead of safety and security and trust, right? So anything you can do in terms of that, whether those be the belief systems, etc., is an important part of it. I too did a lot of the work by Byron Katie. So powerful. So it helped me incredibly with being able to get out of the story and get into truth for myself. And the other part of it, and I go back to it, look at building a trusting relationship with yourself. Look at all the ways in which you can trust yourself to show up for you, especially if you are living in a world like I was, where nobody else was showing up for me. I had to be everything for myself because it wasn't happening on the external aspects of my life. So begin to foster trust with yourself, and you're going to see it's going to become easier and easier to trust what it is you're receiving from the spirit world. Yeah, good
Yeah.
question. Such a good question.
Mm.
Gail, you're so welcome. She really says she loves the message about the hydration. Exactly. Like, it's like, go drink water. I know a number of people, say, oh, I don't like to drink water. Well, you know what? You got to find ways to get it in because your body needs it.
Yeah.
So Kathy has a question. I have a hard time quieting my mind and hearing spirit. Is there a chance I cannot communicate with the other side? I do not feel like it is possible for me, even though I want to.
Yeah, no, I would say that it's not that you're not communicating. I would say that like we live in such a high-paced world right now. Like technology is at an all-time high and it's so advanced.
Yes.
Just the way we live, the way we work. I mean, even, back in the day, you think about, well, way back, like, my parents there was no mobile phones. When I was younger, there was no mobile phones. So even now we're expected to be available all the time, and someone messages us, we respond, or they ring, we respond. So we've created a world where there's not a lot of stillness. So I would say that it's not a case that you cannot communicate. I would say it's just a case of like, if you've and especially when we talk about the nervous system, like if you've been in fight or flight and that's survival mode, goodness gracious, I've spent a lot of time in there. When I'm in survival mode, I cannot communicate clearly with the spirit world. It's just not possible. Like my frequency, my energy is it's not in tune with them. I'm not in any kind of stillness. So I would say cultivating more stillness in yourself. So bringing your awareness back to the breath. And even if you can do that for 10 minutes, say every day, and that's going to get longer and longer. And the more you can quieten the mind, the more obviously you give yourself those chances for spirit to come through. So I would say it's just like we live in such a fast-paced world right now. We really, 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 really do. We've forgotten what stillness is. Getting out in nature, if you can, if there's somewhere where you can get out in nature, like if it's to the beach or to the ocean. I'm not entirely sure what it's like where you're from. I think you said perhaps you're in Massachusetts. I have no idea what it's like there. But if there's any kind of nature, if it's a park, I mean, that nature is like a lower vibration in terms of a high vibration, but lower vibration in terms of like that chaos that we experience in the world. So even getting out in nature as well. So no, you can absolutely communicate. Anyone can communicate.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Anyone can communicate. That's just it. It's not just for some, it's available for everyone.
Yeah.
I think that's the other piece of it too, Kathy. One other thing to understand is that when you do create opportunity for stillness, and I think where one of the greatest misconceptions sometimes can be, even in terms of meditation, of being able, I need to stop my thinking, I need to stop my thoughts. But to know that when you create any kind of stillness, like that's why you want to, as Emma said, you want to focus on the breath. You want to keep bringing yourself back to the breath. You're still going to have lots of thought. You just want to learn to slow them down. And in learning to slow them down, you begin to realize that it is impossible for a medium to go into any kind of sense of stillness and not think. So quieting the mind is not the issue. It's just all you're wanting to do is slow down the busyness of the mind, because it's like now you're available. Spirit's going, oh my gosh, we have all the solutions, all the answers. Here's everything. Even you thinking about your problem during a meditation is the problem looking to get resolved. Like it's like people say, all I think about is my problems when I sit in meditation. Good, because that means that your guidance is coming. The solution is incoming, right? So it's like just knowing that, one, it's not about quieting the mind. mind, it's just about slowing things down. It's about finding some stillness, catching your breath, etc. The other thing here too, the hearing of spirit, this becomes, I think sometimes people try to think of communication or hearing spirit like direct communication, like I'm talking to you now. That's not necessarily how we hear spirit. We can hear a voice inside of our head. We can hear a voice in another bedroom. Absolutely, that can take place. But hearing messages from spirit often are like pressure in your ears, itchy ears, ears ringing, feeling like you're underwater, feeling like you can't quite, make it's like just let yourself be in that hearing sensation. You're receiving an energy impression. You're hearing the energy and just be with it for a moment because it's going to register or it's going to what I always say trigger another one of the soul senses, which means it's going to activate a vision for you. It's going to activate a clear knowing or an idea into your mind. That is clairaudient communication. It's just you're
Yeah.
receiving it clairaudiently and you're understanding the message in a different form. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. So just don't give up on it, Kathy. I think that's the biggest thing here. It's just is, yes, there is communication happening, and I can even see that energetically, but it's how you're defining the communication that might be where you're tripping up. I'm so glad you're going to be in level 1 in November. Like I can't wait to be able to help and support you into recognizing what an amazing medium you already are. It's just, it's like moving through some of these things, right? So yeah. Oh my gosh. Great question though. Great question. Okay. Let me just see here. We have more. Oh, you're so welcome, Brenda. Oh my gosh, you're so welcome, Haley. Leon, yeah, that's I understand. Needed to leave early. Kathy, you are so welcome. Oh my gosh. Truly, I love these conversations. Emma, as always, I love hanging out with you. I know we live like across the
Likewise.
globe from each other, and maybe
Yeah.
one day we're actually going to have opportunity to be in person, but it
One
just
day I will be over there. Yes.
yeah, your wisdom. I mean, the wisdom of your experiences, your perspective, and just such a gift. I just think you are such a gift to everyone, and of course, such a gift to me as well. So, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time out, of course, to be a part of our conversation here this evening. And to everyone who else has joined us, thank you as well for coming in and taking time out of your busy life and all the shenanigans that you've got going on to be present with us here as well. Please join me tomorrow. I have Angel Doig coming on for her conversation to share yet another inspiring story that brings into this like, oh my gosh, I just feel like the more people that can embrace and say, I am a medium, the better this world is going to be. So I can't wait for
So
that
exciting.
conversation as well. Very exciting. God bless everybody. Take care. Bye-bye for now. Thanks,
Thanks,
Emma.
Bonnie.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.